everything. Walking into any room, speaking to anyone, and knowing you hold the keys to influence, connection, and respect. Not manipulation, not tricks, everything. But the ability to authentically get what you want because you understand people. What drives them, what inspires them, and what makes them say yes. This isn't about overpowering others, everything. It's about unlocking the power within yourself to communicate with clarity, confidence, and purpose. If you've ever felt overlooked, ignored, everything, or frustrated because people don't give you what you deserve, this audiobook will change that. It will teach you how to turn interactions into opportunities, everything. How to transform hesitation into influence, and how to finally get what you want from anyone. When most people think of influence, they imagine clever words, persuasive tactics, everything, or some secret technique that only the most charismatic leaders know. But the truth is, influence begins long before you open your mouth. It starts in the quiet space of your own mind, everything. Before anyone else believes in you, you must first believe in yourself. Before anyone else sees you as a leader, you must first step into that identity internally, everything. Influence is not something you perform, it is something you embody, and the foundation of that embodiment is mindset. Think about it, everything. You've probably had moments where you entered a room and immediately felt invisible. Maybe you hesitated before speaking. Maybe you questioned whether your opinion mattered, everything. Maybe you even rehearsed the right words in your head but never said them. And yet, you've also likely had moments when you felt unstoppable, when you spoke and people listened, everything. When your presence alone seemed to carry weight. The difference wasn't the room, or the people, or even the words. The difference was you, your state of mind, everything. Your belief in your own value, and the certainty you carried. That difference is influence at its core. I want to share a story with you. A few years ago, everything. A young man I'll call Daniel came to me for advice. He was brilliant, hardworking, and full of ideas, but he struggled deeply with being heard. In meetings at work, everything. He had solutions that could have saved time and money, but his voice was always drowned out. He told me, "It's like no one notices me. I speak up, everything, but it's as if my words vanish in the air." When I watched him in conversation, I noticed something striking. His words were clear, but his presence wasn't. He slouched slightly, everything. Avoided eye contact, and spoke with a tone that suggested he wasn't fully convinced of his own ideas. And if he wasn't convinced, how could anyone else be? Everything. I told him something that changed everything. People don't just listen to what you say, they listen to what you believe while you're saying it. Everything. Influence is less about content and more about conviction. Everything. When Daniel shifted his mindset from, "I hope they hear me," to, "I know my contribution matters," his entire energy transformed. Within months, everything. He was leading projects he had once been ignored in, and colleagues began seeking his input rather than overlooking it. What changed? Not his knowledge, not his words. His mindset. Everything. This is where influence really begins. You cannot persuade others from a place of uncertainty. If you doubt yourself, others will mirror that doubt. But when you radiate quiet confidence, everything. People sense it instinctively. Humans are wired to follow certainty. In moments of hesitation, they look to the person who seems sure, and certainty comes from within. It is a decision, everything, not a condition. You don't wait until you have every answer to feel confident. You decide, right now, that your perspective has value. But perhaps you're wondering, everything. How do I build that certainty when my self-doubt feels so strong? The first step is awareness. Notice the stories you tell yourself before you enter an interaction. Everything. If your inner dialogue says, "They probably won't care what I say," then you're already surrendering your influence. Change the script. Instead, tell yourself, "Everything. I bring value to this conversation. What I have to share matters." At first, this may feel unnatural, but with repetition, your brain begins to accept it as truth. Remember, everything. Every influential person you admire, whether it's a leader, a speaker, or even a close friend who seems magnetic, once battled with insecurity. Everything. The difference is that they chose not to let it define them. Another powerful practice is to embody the physical state of confidence before you even speak. Your body leads your mind, everything, and your mind leads your influence. Stand tall, shoulders back, chin slightly lifted. Breathe deeply and steadily. These physical signals tell your brain that you are safe, grounded, everything, and in control. And when your brain believes it, others will too. Studies have shown that posture and tone account for more than half of how people perceive your authority in a conversation. Everything. Think about that more than your words. It's your presence that persuades. Let's return to Daniel for a moment. Everything. He began practicing what we called entering with certainty. Before every meeting, he would pause outside the door, breathe deeply, and remind himself, everything. I am not here to beg for attention. I am here to contribute value. He would enter the room upright, grounded, and ready. At first, it felt forced, but soon, everything. People began reacting differently. They leaned in when he spoke. They asked follow-up questions. He had shifted his mindset, and the world shifted with it. You see, everything. The mindset of influence isn't arrogance. It's not about pretending you're better than others. It's about recognizing that you already have worth and choosing to act from that truth, everything. There's a quiet power in someone who doesn't need to prove themselves, but simply knows they belong. That power is magnetic, because most people are caught in self-doubt, everything. When they encounter someone with certainty, it feels like a breath of fresh air. There's another important element to this mindset, expecting positive outcomes. Everything. Many people approach conversations with fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of being ignored. But fear creates tension, and tension repels connection. Instead, everything. Expect that people will be open to you. Expect that they will listen, that they will respond, that they will value your words. This doesn't mean you'll never face rejection. Of course, everything. Sometimes people will say no. But your expectation of positivity creates an energy that draws others in. Think of it this way: would you rather talk to someone who seems already defeated, everything, or someone who radiates the belief that a solution can be found? Influence belongs to the latter. Consider an everyday example. Everything. Imagine walking into a coffee shop and the barista greets you with a warm smile, making you feel welcome. Instantly, you feel drawn to them, even if they don't say much. Everything. Contrast that with a barista who looks tired, speaks flatly, and avoids eye contact. Which one has more influence over your experience? Everything. It's the one who expects the interaction to be positive. Influence is not reserved for big stages or corporate boardrooms. It happens in the smallest daily exchanges. Everything. And when you approach those exchanges with a mindset of certainty and positivity, you begin to shape the world around you. Actionable advice can make this real for you. Everything. I encourage you to start small. Before your next conversation, whether it's with a coworker, a friend, or even a stranger, pause and ask yourself, everything. What outcome do I expect here? If your expectation is negative, flip it. Everything. Replace, they won't listen, with, they'll be open to hearing me. Replace, I'll probably mess this up, with, I'm capable of handling this. This shift may feel minor, everything, but it changes how you carry yourself, and that change is what others respond to. Another practice is visualization. Everything. Take 5 minutes each day to close your eyes and imagine yourself in a situation where you want influence. Maybe a job interview, a negotiation, everything, or even a heartfelt conversation with a loved one. See yourself standing tall, speaking clearly, and watching others nod in agreement. Imagine the feeling of certainty in your body. Everything. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined experiences and real ones. By rehearsing success in your mind, you prepare your nervous system to experience it in reality. Everything. As you practice these steps, notice how people respond. Notice the subtle shifts: more eye contact, more attentiveness, more agreement. Everything. These are signs that your mindset is reshaping your influence. Over time, it won't feel like an effort. It will feel natural because you've rewired your identity. Everything. You are no longer someone who hopes to be heard. You are someone who expects to be. That shift is everything. Influence is not about dominating others. Everything. It is about aligning your inner certainty with your outer presence so that when you speak, people feel compelled to listen. Everything. The mindset of influence begins with the decision to believe in your worth, to expect positive outcomes, and to carry yourself with quiet confidence. When you do, everything. Influence is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you are. There's a reason why some people walk into a room and within minutes everyone gravitates toward them. Everything. It's not always their status, their title, or even what they say. It's something deeper. Something that resonates at an emotional level. Everything. We all like to believe that human beings are rational creatures, that we make decisions based on facts and logic, but the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. Everything. People don't respond to logic first. They respond to emotion. They respond to how you make them feel. And this is the hidden language of human connection. Everything. If you can understand and master it, you can create bonds, influence decisions, and earn trust in a way that feels effortless. Think back to a moment in your life when someone inspired you. Everything. Maybe it was a teacher who made learning exciting, a boss who believed in you when you doubted yourself, or even a stranger who made you feel seen at exactly the right time. Chances are, everything. What stayed with you wasn't the specific words they used. It was their energy, their tone, their presence, and the way they made you feel in that moment. Everything. That's the real language of connection, and it's available to all of us. The first layer of this language is body language. Before you ever say a word, your body speaks. Everything. The way you hold yourself, the way your eyes meet another person's, the way your shoulders relax or tense. These cues are being read instinctively by everyone around you. Everything. Imagine someone speaking passionately, but their arms are crossed tight against their chest, their eyes darting to the floor. No matter how good their words are, everything. Their body contradicts the message. Now picture the opposite, someone who stands tall, open, with a calm smile, maintaining easy eye contact. Even before they've spoken a single sentence, everything. You feel that they are trustworthy and confident. That's the power of nonverbal communication. It makes up the majority of the message people take from you. Everything. I once worked with a young professional who told me she struggled to get her ideas across in meetings. She was smart, capable, and her proposals were solid. Everything. Yet she constantly felt overlooked. When I asked her to record herself presenting, the problem became clear. Her voice was strong, but her body told a different story. Everything. She fidgeted with her hands, avoided eye contact, and leaned back as if she were shrinking from the spotlight. Everything. Once she started aligning her body language with the strength of her ideas, sitting forward, using purposeful hand movements, holding eye contact, people began listening. Everything. Nothing about her words changed. It was all about how she carried herself. That's how powerful body language can be. The next layer is tone. Everything. Think of tone as the emotional color you paint over your words. Two people can say the exact same sentence, but depending on their tone, the meaning completely shifts. A soft, everything empathetic tone can disarm defenses. A firm, decisive tone can command respect. A warm, playful tone can put others at ease. Your tone tells others how to interpret your words. Everything. If you've ever texted someone and had them misunderstand your meaning, you know how much we rely on tone to shape communication. Without it, words can fall flat or be misread. Everything. Here's a simple exercise. Try saying the phrase, "I need to talk to you," in 3 different tones, one serious, one playful, one compassionate. Instantly, everything. You'll notice how the listener feels something different each time. The words haven't changed, but the emotional impact has. When you choose your tone deliberately, you gain influence. Everything. You can calm someone's nerves, inspire them to act, or make them feel understood without altering a single word. Then comes storytelling. Humans are wired for stories. Everything. Long before we had books, lectures, or written laws, we told stories. It's how knowledge was passed, how values were taught, how communities bonded. Facts are forgotten. Everything. But stories are remembered. When you share a story, you bypass the logical brain and tap directly into the emotional brain. Everything. Imagine trying to explain the importance of perseverance by rattling off statistics. Everything. Now imagine telling the story of Thomas Edison failing over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Which one sticks? Which one stirs something inside you? When you tell a story, everything. You don't just deliver information, you create an experience, and experiences are what people remember. That's why leaders, teachers, everything, and influencers throughout history have always used storytelling as a tool. It makes ideas relatable, personal, and unforgettable. If you want to connect deeply, everything, learn to weave stories into your conversations. They don't have to be long or dramatic. Even small, everyday stories about a lesson you learned, a challenge you faced, everything, or a moment of joy can build trust and resonance. But at the heart of this secret language is empathy. Empathy is the ability to step into someone else's shoes, everything, to see the world through their eyes, and to feel what they feel. When people feel that you truly understand them, they open up to you. Walls come down, trust builds, everything, and influence becomes natural. Too often, people listen to respond rather than to understand. Everything. They're so focused on what they want to say next that they miss the emotional cues right in front of them. Empathy flips that script. It says, "I hear you. I see you. Everything. I get you." And when someone feels seen, they are far more willing to listen to what you have to say. I remember a friend who went through a difficult time at work. She was frustrated, everything, overwhelmed, and felt unsupported by her team. Most of the advice she received was logical: create a to-do list, delegate better, manage your time. But none of that really helped her. Everything. What she needed wasn't advice, she needed empathy. Someone to sit with her and say, "That sounds really tough, everything. I can see how much it's weighing on you." That simple act of acknowledging her emotions did more than all the logical solutions combined. Because once she felt understood, everything, she had the emotional space to think clearly and solve her own problems. That's the essence of empathy. It doesn't just connect you to others, it empowers them, everything. So how do you put all of this into practice? Start small. Pay attention to your body language when you speak. Notice if your posture and gestures align with your message, everything. Experiment with your tone. Try softening it when you want to build connection or strengthening it when you need authority. Practice telling short stories in your conversations, everything, especially ones that reveal your humanity. And above all, listen with empathy. When someone is speaking, tune into not just their words, but their emotions. Watch their face, their eyes, everything, their body. Hear what they're not saying out loud, everything. One of the most surprising truths about influence is that it doesn't require you to be the smartest person in the room or the loudest voice at the table, everything. It requires you to be the most human. People remember how you made them feel long after they've forgotten what you said. They might not recall the exact details of your argument, everything, but they'll remember the warmth of your smile, the way you leaned in when they spoke, the calm reassurance in your voice, or the story you shared that touched their heart. Everything. We live in a world where information is everywhere. Logic and facts are abundant. What's scarce is connection. Everything. What's rare is the person who can cut through the noise and speak directly to someone's heart. And when you can do that, you become unforgettable. You become the person people trust, everything, follow, and say yes to, not because you forced them, but because you made them feel understood, valued, and inspired. That's the secret language of human connection. It's not a trick, everything. And it's not manipulation. It's the art of being deeply present, of aligning your body, your voice, your stories, and your empathy in a way that communicates one powerful message. Everything. I understand you, and I care. And when people feel that, they open doors for you that logic alone could never unlock. There's a simple truth most people overlook when it comes to influence. Everything. If you never ask, you rarely receive. Think about it. How many times in your life have you walked away disappointed not because someone denied you everything, but because you never actually voiced what you wanted in the first place? You hinted at it, you danced around it, you hoped the other person would read between the lines. But they didn't, everything, and so the opportunity slipped away. We grow up absorbing all sorts of unspoken rules about asking. Don't bother people, don't be too forward, don't make someone uncomfortable, everything. Maybe you were taught that asking for help was a sign of weakness, or that if you deserved something, people would just notice and offer it without you needing to say a word, everything. And so we tiptoe through life with muffled voices, quietly wishing instead of boldly requesting. The result, we settle, we accept less than we want, and over time, everything, we convince ourselves that maybe this is just the way life is supposed to be. But clarity is power, and the art of asking clearly, confidently, everything, directly, is one of the most life-changing skills you can ever master. When you learn how to ask, you stop hoping and start creating. You stop wishing and start receiving. Everything. Asking is not about demanding. It's not about manipulation. It's about giving people the chance to say yes to you when many of them might be far more willing than you think. Everything. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're sitting in a restaurant. You're hungry, but instead of telling the waiter what you want, you give vague hints. You say, "Well, everything. I like things that are warm, maybe something with flavor, maybe something not too heavy." The waiter stares, confused, everything, and eventually brings you something completely different from what you wanted. Whose fault is that? It's yours, because you never actually asked for what you wanted. Everything. Life is exactly the same. The clearer you are, the more precise the results. The first shift is realizing that asking is not selfish. Think about this: when you don't ask everything, you actually rob others of the chance to contribute, to connect, to support you. Many people love to help, to share, to say yes. By asking clearly, you open the door to mutual benefit. Everything. You create a bridge instead of a wall. Let's look at a real-world story. A young professional I once met told me about how he worked hard at his company. Everything. but he was passed over for promotions. He thought his bosses would notice his dedication, his late nights, his willingness to do more. But year after year, everything. Others got the opportunities he dreamed of. Finally, frustrated, he asked for advice, and the advice he got was simple: ask. The next time a position opened, instead of sitting quietly, everything. He went to his manager and said, "I want to be considered. Here's the value I bring, here's what I've accomplished, everything. And here's why I believe I can lead at this next level." Within weeks, he had the promotion. The difference wasn't his talent, it was his willingness to articulate it, everything. He didn't just hope someone would see his worth, he asked for it. So how do you ask in a way that feels natural and irresistible? It begins with clarity, everything. Know what you want before you open your mouth. Vague requests create vague results. If you want advice, don't just say, "Can you help me?" Say everything. I admire the way you built your business, and I'd love to ask you 3 specific questions about how you got started. If you want support from a friend, don't say everything. I could use some help sometime. Say, "Could you come with me on Saturday to help me move boxes?" It would mean a lot. Specificity makes people feel safe, everything. It tells them you're not wasting their time, and it gives them something solid to respond to. The next part is tone. The most effective asks are direct, everything. But they're wrapped in warmth and respect. You don't need to apologize for wanting something, and you don't need to act entitled. Think of it as an invitation, not a demand, everything. For example, instead of saying, "You need to give me this opportunity," you might say, "I'd love the chance to prove myself in this role, everything. What would it take for me to earn that opportunity?" The difference is enormous. One creates defensiveness, the other opens dialogue. Now let's talk about timing, everything. So many people ruin their asks by choosing the wrong moment. If your boss is rushing out the door, if your spouse is exhausted after a long day, if your friend is distracted, everything, that's not the time to make a request. Timing communicates respect. It shows you value the other person's state of mind. The same ask at a calmer, everything, more receptive moment is far more likely to be heard and granted. And here's something even more powerful: frame your ask in a way that shows mutual benefit, everything. People are naturally more inclined to say yes when they feel like they're part of a win-win. Imagine you're pitching an idea to a colleague. Instead of saying, "Everything, I need you to help me with this project," you could say, "If we work together on this, I think it could raise the profile of both of us in the company, everything. Your skills and mine would make a strong team." Notice how different that feels. You're not just asking for help, you're offering collaboration, recognition, and value. Of course, everything. Even with perfect clarity and timing, you won't always get a yes, and that's okay. The fear of rejection is the single greatest barrier to asking, but here's the truth, everything. Rejection rarely destroys us. It stings for a moment, but then life moves on. What really destroys us is silence, the opportunities we never gave ourselves because we were too afraid to ask. Everything. A no is not a failure. A no is simply feedback. It might mean not now, not this way, not from this person. But it never means never, everything. I once spoke to an entrepreneur who told me she pitched her idea to 50 investors before she got one yes, 50 rejections. And yet, that single yes changed her entire life. Looking back, everything. She realized that every no was simply part of the process, teaching her how to refine her ask, sharpen her clarity, and present with more conviction. She said something I'll never forget, everything. The yes that mattered was waiting for me, but I would never have found it if I let the first no stop me. This is the courage you need to cultivate, everything. Asking is not about guaranteed approval. It's about giving yourself the chance. Every ask is a door you knock on, someone open. But the more doors you knock on, everything, the more rooms you enter, the more possibilities unfold. So here's a practical challenge for you in the next 24 hours. Make one clear ask. It could be big, it could be small. Everything. Maybe it's asking a friend to join you for a workout. Maybe it's asking your boss for feedback. Maybe it's asking a client for the sale you've been circling around. Don't wait. Everything. Don't overthink it. Just ask. You will be surprised how often people are willing to say yes when you finally give them the chance. And as you do, watch how your confidence grows. Everything. Every time you ask, you strengthen the muscle of clarity. You reinforce the belief that your voice deserves to be heard. Everything. You start to walk through life not as someone who passively waits for scraps of opportunity, but as someone who claims them with courage and grace. Because at the heart of it, everything. Asking is an act of self-respect. It says, I know what I want, I believe I'm worthy of it, and I trust others enough to invite them into that vision with me. Everything. There is a moment we all know too well. You put your heart into asking for something, an opportunity, a raise, a partnership, a date, and the answer comes back short, sharp, and heavy. No, everything. And in that instant it feels final, like a door slammed shut, a wall erected between you and the thing you wanted most. Many people take that no as the end of the story. They retreat. Everything. They shrink back, and they quietly teach themselves to stop asking. But what if I told you that no is not the end at all? What if no is simply the beginning? Everything. What if every no hides within it a hidden yes, waiting for you to uncover it? Think about it. Everything. Some of the most successful people in the world are not those who never heard no. In fact, they probably heard it more than anyone else. The difference is everything. They didn't treat rejection as a verdict. They treated it as feedback, as information, as an invitation to dig deeper. Rejection is not the closing of a door. Everything. It's the knocking sound on another one. And if you have the courage to listen, everything, you'll realize that no often carries a message, one that can show you exactly how to turn resistance into opportunity. Let me give you an example. Everything. There was once a young entrepreneur who had a vision for a new kind of coffee chain. He went to banks pitching his idea with passion, and one by one, they all told him no. Not one, not two, everything. But over 200 rejections. Imagine hearing no 200 times. Most people would have quit after the first 5, or maybe the first 20. But he didn't stop. Everything. Because he knew that every no wasn't a full rejection. It was a step toward the person who would eventually say yes. That entrepreneur was Howard Schultz. Everything. The man who turned Starbucks into a global brand. Without those 200 rejections, there would be no Starbucks on the corner of nearly every city street. Everything. When you hear no, you are standing at the edge of transformation. The mistake is to hear that word as if it's final. No rarely means never. More often, everything it means not now, or not like this, or I need more information before I can trust this. Every no has layers beneath it. It may be hiding fear, uncertainty, everything, lack of clarity, or competing priorities. And if you learn to peel back those layers, you'll discover that rejection is really just a form of hesitation. And hesitation can be worked with. Everything. Think back to your own life. How many times have you said no to something, only to later change your mind? Maybe you said no to a job offer, but after learning more, you reconsidered. Everything. Maybe you said no to a relationship, but with time, you grew into it. Maybe you said no to buying something, but later you circled back and purchased it. That shows you something powerful. Everything. People's first reactions are not their final ones. They are simply the surface level of a deeper conversation. The question is, everything. How do you handle rejection in a way that allows that deeper conversation to open up? The first step is to remove the sting. Most people hear no and take it personally. Everything. They assume it's a judgment on their worth, on their idea, on their character. But no is rarely about you. It's about the other person's current state of mind. Everything. When someone says no, they are simply protecting their resources, their time, or their comfort zone. If you can detach your self-worth from the rejection, everything, you gain the freedom to stay curious. Curiosity is the secret weapon in turning no into ways. Instead of walking away hurt, you can lean in and ask questions. You might say, everything, I completely understand. Can you share with me what's holding you back? Or, I appreciate your honesty. Everything. Is there something specific you'd need to see for this to feel like the right fit? These questions don't push, they invite. They turn a wall into a window. Everything. They uncover the hidden reason behind the rejection. And once you know that reason, you can work with it. Take the story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Everything. When she first pitched her product idea, she was laughed out of many rooms. Investors didn't see the vision. They said no. But instead of giving up, she asked questions, listened carefully, everything, and refined her pitch. She learned that people needed to not just hear about her product. They needed to experience it. So she shifted her approach. Let people try it on. Everything. And suddenly the same people who had said no were now leaning in, eager to say yes. You see, rejection can be your greatest teacher. It shows you where your message isn't landing. Everything, where your timing is off, or where your offer needs more clarity. If you treat every no as valuable feedback instead of failure, you create a cycle of growth. Everything. Each rejection sharpens your skill, toughens your skin, and brings you closer to the version of yourself who can command a was. Here's something practical you can do. Everything. The next time you hear no, resist the urge to retreat. Instead, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what is this no really about? Is it about money, timing, trust, everything, or simply fear of change? Second, what can I learn from this no? Is it pointing out a gap in my communication, my confidence, or my offer? Third, how can I reframe this no as not yet everything? By asking these questions, you transform the sting of rejection into fuel for your resilience. Let me share another personal story, one that illustrates the hidden power of persistence. Everything. A young writer once submitted his manuscript to dozens of publishers. Each one replied with the same short message: no. They didn't believe his story would sell. But he refused to quit. Everything. He believed in his work, so he kept sending it out. Eventually, one small publisher took a chance. That manuscript was Harry Potter, and the writer was J.K. Rowling. Everything. If she had taken those first rejections as final, millions of readers would never have experienced the magic of her words. Now, everything. I'm not telling you that every no will eventually turn into a yes. Some won't. But here's the truth: the more no's you're willing to endure, everything, the more yeses you'll eventually collect. Every rejection weeds out the wrong fit and clears the path toward the right one. And in many cases, everything. The difference between failure and success is not genius or luck or privilege. It's simply who stayed in the game long enough to hear the yes. Think about Thomas Edison, everything, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." He was rejected over and over again by experiments that didn't succeed. Everything, but he saw each no as a necessary step on the staircase toward his ultimate breakthrough. Imagine if he had given up after 100 tries or 500 tries or even 5,000. Everything. The world would be darker, literally. There's a beautiful shift that happens when you begin to see rejection this way. Suddenly, no loses its power to wound you. Everything. Instead of shrinking your confidence, it strengthens it. Instead of being the enemy, rejection becomes your training partner, shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable. Everything. And when you approach conversations with that energy, people feel it. They sense your resilience. They see that you're not desperate, you're not fragile, you're grounded, confident, everything, and curious. And ironically, that energy itself makes them more likely to trust you, to reconsider, and to say yes. So the next time you hear no, I want you to smile, even if it hurts. Everything. Because you now know something most people don't. You know that no is not the period at the end of your story. It's the comma, the pause, everything, the invitation to continue the conversation. It is not rejection, it is redirection. And if you have the courage to lean in, to ask questions, to keep showing up with persistence and grace, everything, that no can become the very doorway to the yes you've been waiting for. There comes a moment in every person's journey where influence no longer feels like a set of techniques, everything, but like a natural extension of who they are. It's the difference between someone who tries hard to impress people and someone who simply walks into a room and others lean in, everything, eager to listen. Influence at its highest level stops being something you do and starts being something you are. And that is where real power lives, not in rehearsed tricks, everything, but in the presence you carry every single day. Think about someone in your life who seems to have that effortless pull. Maybe it's a leader you've worked with, a mentor, everything, or even a family member. They don't need to shout. They don't need to constantly demand attention. Yet when they speak, people listen. When they ask for help, others don't hesitate. Everything. When they share an idea, it spreads. The reason is not luck. It's not charm alone. It's a lifestyle built on consistent habits that make them a person of influence in every interaction. Everything. The truth is, people are always watching. They notice how you treat the waiter, how you respond when someone makes a mistake, how you carry yourself when things don't go your way. Everything. Influence is built in those small, invisible moments that others quietly file away in their memory. A single grand gesture might impress for a day, but consistency impresses for a lifetime. Everything. If you want to become someone others naturally want to say yes to, you must live influence, not just perform it when convenient. Everything. I remember meeting a man at a business event who had this quality. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, and he wasn't even the most accomplished by traditional standards. Everything. Yet within minutes, people were drawn to him. He listened with genuine curiosity. He made others feel important, like their stories mattered. And when he finally did share his perspective, everything, it landed with weight because everyone trusted him already. Later, I asked him what his secret was. He smiled and said, "I don't try to influence people. I just try to serve them." Everything. Influence follows naturally. That conversation stayed with me because it captures the essence of this chapter. Everything. Influence is not about forcing your will on others. It's about living in a way that inspires trust, respect, and willingness. Everything. One of the first habits of influential people is consistency between their words and their actions. When people see that you do what you say you'll do, everything, that your behavior matches your promises, they begin to trust you on a deeper level. Think about how rare this actually is. Everything. How many times have you heard someone say they'll call and never do, or promise support but vanish when it matters? Each of those moments erodes influence. On the other hand, everything. When someone delivers again and again, even in small ways, their influence compounds. Imagine you are building a bank account of trust. Every kept promise is a deposit. Everything. Every broken one is a withdrawal. The most influential people are simply those with the largest balance. Another vital quality is emotional control. Everything. Influence collapses the moment you lose control of yourself. Think about a leader who panics at the first sign of trouble, who lashes out or blames others. They may still have authority. Everything, but their influence weakens. People might obey, but they won't be inspired. Now imagine a leader who stays calm in the storm, who listens before reacting. Everything, who turns conflict into collaboration. That kind of composure makes people lean closer because they feel safe in that presence. Influence thrives on emotional steadiness. It says to others, everything. You can trust me not only when things are easy, but when things get hard. The way you listen also shapes your influence more than most people realize. Everything. Too many approach conversations with the intention to respond, not to understand. But people of influence flip this dynamic. They give full attention, they pause. Everything. They ask questions that show genuine interest. Have you ever had a conversation where you walked away thinking, "Wow, that person really got me"? That's the memory of influence at work. Everything. When people feel heard, they naturally open doors for you. And here's the beautiful part: listening costs you nothing, but it pays in ways that no clever words ever could. Everything. There's also an invisible layer of influence rooted in generosity. Not generosity in the sense of giving money alone, but generosity of spirit. Sharing ideas, offering encouragement. Everything. Connecting people with opportunities. Think of someone who consistently lifts others up, who celebrates wins instead of competing with them. Over time, that person becomes magnetic. Everything. People want to be around them, help them, and follow them. Because deep down, we are drawn to those who make us feel larger, not smaller. But let's be honest, everything. Living as a person of influence is not always easy. It requires patience when you want to snap, humility when your ego wants to shine, and discipline when your comfort zone tempts you. Everything. The easy path is to demand, to manipulate, or to fake charm. The harder, more rewarding path is to live influence with integrity, even when nobody's watching. Everything. That's what makes it powerful. It's not a performance, it's your character. Picture two colleagues at work. One constantly tries to push others to support their ideas, everything using flashy presentations and persuasive arguments. The other consistently helps teammates, listens carefully, gives credit generously, and speaks with calm authority. Over time, everything. Who do you think becomes the person everyone gravitates toward? Who do you think gets promoted, gets recommended, gets trusted with big decisions? Influence is a long game. Everything, and character always outlasts tactics. Now, let's make this practical. Start by examining the way you enter every interaction. Ask yourself, everything. Am I showing up with curiosity or with an agenda? Am I listening more than I'm talking? Am I making people feel valued, or am I trying to prove my own value? Everything. These subtle shifts turn ordinary conversations into opportunities for influence. Then build rituals around consistency. If you say you'll call at 3 o'clock, call at 3 o'clock. Everything. If you promise to deliver a project by Friday, deliver by Friday. Each fulfilled commitment is a building block in the structure of your influence. Everything. And never underestimate the influence of small kindnesses. A thank you note, a word of encouragement, an acknowledgement of someone's effort. These may seem minor. Everything. But they shape how people perceive you. Most people go through their day unnoticed. When you notice them, you rise above the crowd. Influence is not about grand speeches. Everything. It's about daily touches of humanity. There's one more truth about living as a person of influence. It is less about convincing others and more about becoming someone worth following. Everything. When you develop yourself, your discipline, your empathy, your clarity of vision, people naturally align with you. They don't say yes because you asked perfectly. Everything. They say yes because they believe in you. And that is the highest level of influence, the kind that doesn't require effort to maintain because it radiates from who you are. Everything. I want you to imagine what life looks like when this becomes your identity. You walk into a meeting, and people lean in because your presence already commands respect. You ask for support, everything, and people say yes without hesitation because they trust you'll use it wisely. You share an idea, and it spreads because people believe in your consistency and character, everything. This is not about manipulation or pretending. It's about alignment, living so authentically, with such steadiness and generosity that influence follows you wherever you go, everything. So the real question is not, how do I influence people? But, how do I live as a person of influence every day? When you choose to embody respect, discipline, empathy, and integrity, everything, you no longer chase influence. You attract it, and once you reach that point, you'll find that getting what you want from others is no longer a struggle, everything, because people want to give it to you. Not out of obligation, but out of trust, respect, and belief in who you are.